it's gonna rule the world, it's gonna revolutionize. AI could improve maybe a 10,000x of the productivity in future.
How I see in a funny way is that in the future, AI is going to push everyone to kind of go towards creative problem solving. It won't let anyone hide behind repetitive tasks because those repetitive tasks doesn't exist anymore.
The most costliest thing that we cannot define a cost for is human creativity and human mind. Because if a human mind is free, it gives space for development.
One of the primary bottleneck for all this is going to be computation and energy generally. So they would like to create clean energy using nuclear fusion, which would be used to run supercomputers.
In sum total, it's gonna be a paradigm shift how the jobs are. So it's a big question.
My concern is more of like there would be more people losing jobs than new jobs created. So maybe we should start by introducing you, Edwin. So who is Edwin?
I'm a researcher at Western Michigan University. I'm focusing on the topic quantum machine learning. Currently, I'm a generative AI developer at DataStax and also a passionate about all the technologies that's out there in the world. And I'm from India. And when I was in India, I was like the co-founder and CTO of a small startup called HighLabs.ai. We help students to learn machine learning in a gamified way.
And you were also like a gold medalist back in Cochin University.
Yeah. Yeah. So I completed my master's from Cochin University of Science and Technology. My background was in the domain of robotics, electronics, and pivoted around machine learning. And I was a gold medalist, like the first rank holder at the university, at the department.
Okay, maybe we can go straight to the first question. What inspired you to pursue a career in generative AI research?
So I would say it's not specific to generative AI. So I started my research in AI per se, and later pivoted to generative AI and quantum computing. So generative AI, it's always how human beings have been thinking about. Like we learn something and we try to put it forth in our own way. In the same way, generative AI was how it works. So I thought like, okay, why not explore that particular domain? It's really interesting also, and the use cases and the potential how it would help my research, like the quantum computing research, it is also fascinating. So it's kind of a path that helped me to go into perfect research.
Okay, but that's very interesting considering that the future is going to be about AI, at least from how I see it. It's everything is going to revolve around AI and quantum computing and most of human problems getting solved using artificial intelligence. So I would say it's also a good bet for many young people to bet on, considering the kind of scope it has in the coming years. Maybe can you explain what generative AI is in very simple terms?
So in very simple terms, we could just tell like it is a specific section or class of artificial intelligence where the model or any computer system is able to generate a lot of images or data or audio or videos based on the patterns or relationships that they learned. So AI and machine learning learns around the process called learning, just like how we learn a kid, like we provide a lot of instances or examples. In the same way, the computer or the system learns a lot of examples, and from the examples, it learns the patterns. And if an AI system is able to understand the pattern and generate or create new set of data or new set of images or text, such set of systems are known as like generative AI. It's like an AI that could generate a lot of things, and the potential of this is immense. Like it could be an alternative to the way that we communicate. So I mean, instead of me, it could be my AI agent, like just having my facial features and my audio features. So and it could lead a lot of things into drug discovery also.
And maybe like a simple example would be instead of someone wanting to paint a scenery, you could ask the AI to paint a scenery and it would generate something beautiful. So everything that's supposed to be like a lot of human involvement when it comes to generating text, video, audio, those things are automized and it's getting better on a rapid rate.
Yes, so that is true, but there is always an element of human in the loop. Like even if you want to generate a video or an image, there's something called prompt. Like
Hmm.
Humans need to explain what need to be generated. So AI itself cannot think its own. So the content creation is gonna get creative more enough, but still we need some people who are creative enough to write the creative prompts. So
Hmm.
it's gonna be like an genie or that's behind us that helps us to achieve our task. So that's why we called all the AI things as co-pilot. So it
Hmm.
is like we are the pilot, and it's just something that comes with us that would support us in the journey of our career or excellence.
Okay. Maybe we should give a few examples. Like, what are some surprising ways generative AI is being used today in applications, in broader concept of softwares? How is it used?
Yeah. So there are a lot of things or paradigms that would be revolutionized by AI, like the way that we write contents, the way that we code, or the way that we have customer service also. So and the major thing would be in the domain of quantum computing as well as drug discovery, because humans have our limitations of thinking, but AI could figure out the patterns much more easier. But the basic one would be content creation and software development. So
Hmm.
how in content creation, I mean, a lot of creative tasks takes time. Like the
Hmm.
interview per se takes time to generate the script or to generate the how to ask questions and all. But we could just use an AI to brainstorm our ideas and see whether it's good enough, or to bring forth a lot of new ideas. Or if you want to draft an email, we could just put some sentences and the AI could stitch it up and draft a good email. Or
Hmm.
if you're starting a company and you want a new logo, we could basically use Midjourney or Llama 3 models to
Hmm.
just like my companies regarding teaching students, and it's based in US or India. The target audience is more below 5 or below 3, and generate an logo for the company. So it's as simple as that. Or if you're hiring someone, you need to draft a legal document, and there are legal LLMs and legal models that could draft a whole bunch of legal documents to you and verify, okay, this is a set of legal documents that you could send to your employee. So those are some of the use cases. So anything that could be generated or content based, it is a first use case. And the second is anywhere we might need to find a relation. Like for COVID-3, generative AI was used. Like one of the medicine is useful for a particular symptom, but people who are not aware it could be used for COVID-3. So large language models were able to figure out a relation between the symptoms and suggest, okay, this is a symptom for this device or this disease. Especially COVID is also having a particular symptom of such scenario. So you could use this particular medicine A or B. So it's endless, but it comes with a lot of pain points also, because anything that is without regulation or control, it could be tricky, or yeah, it could be misutilized, or for ethical concerns, and all of these things could arise also in future.
And also it could also make maybe some kind of errors, and
Yeah.
it might be hard to understand since, for example, you could ask it to write a story about a political event, and it might not fetch the facts. It could just imagine a whole imaginary scenario and present it as a fact. So those kind of things happened as well with generative AI. I mean, at least as of now, it's not developed enough to fact check every single data it provides. Um,
That is true. So that's why all the developers as well as the open source community, it helps in providing guardrails as well as how to bring forth regulations. It's like US government or US citizens or US developers develop a lot of things that is so good, because the innovation over here is so fast. And it's a really good notion, like the US develops and the UK brings forth a proper structured regulations. So it's like all the countries around the world is trying to get a bit of AI in their own lifestyle or their own culture, as well as bringing all those safeguards and guardrails to prevent misuse of AI. Mentioning about that, uh, it's always garbage in, garbage out for any of the AI systems. So we feed in with a lot of biased or ethical concern related data for training. It could it could give rise to garbage out. So if there's a biased data for training, the output is obviously going to be biased. So it's our question mark, but it's we are just tipping the stone on the like the starting point. There's a lot of things out there that need to be explored. The same issue was there when computer was introduced in the beginning. Like it's gonna rule the world, it's gonna revolutionize. Yes, it did revolutionize, but uh, at some point, humans were able to control computers and like improve the productivity maybe 100x or 1000x. So in the same way, AI could improve maybe a 10,000x of the productivity in future.
Okay. How do you think, or maybe you could explain, how does generative AI learn new things and create new content?
Okay, that's so. If you want to summarize that, it's like how we teach a child, or kind of learning from mistakes. It's called a min-max game. It all started with something called generative adversarial network. It's like uh, say there are two people. One person is just writing something, the other person is telling whether it is good or bad. So accordingly, if a person writes something that's not good enough or that's worthy, the person who analyzes is like, okay, this is bad, and the other person goes back and rewrites it. It's kind of a feedback loop. So in the same way, we provide a lot of models. Models is basically something like a black box with a lot of data into it, and the data would have some sort of patterns. It's like if it's related to Edwin Jose, Edwin Jose works in X and Y company. The company is related to generative AI. There are a lot of patterns in the text. Or if it's a conversation, hello, and the next could be how are you, how are you doing, all those. So the model is able to understand these patterns, and
Mhm.
whenever a new thing is asked being to generate it, it's like most of the things that's there, it would fall into some sort of pattern. It's just like musicians said, like if you sing something, it fall into some sort of ragas. In the same way,
Mm.
there would be some sort of underlying patterns that we would have not understood. So AI would figure out those patterns, and it just like reproducing those patterns that's evident. So
Mm.
it's like a game, min-max game, where a system is provided with some sort of information, and another system generates information, and the system tries to like improve on its own. So
Mm.
it's all started with something called generative adversarial networks initially.
Okay. If you take an example, like we are inputting a picture, a photograph
Mhm,
of a man,
mhm,
or we are asking the generative AI to create a photograph of a man, then it's going to, as I am understanding from what you're saying, it basically learns, say, like 1,000 photographs, understand the common pattern that kind of fundamentally makes this photograph, and then it recreates the 101 picture based on those patterns. So it's very similar to those 1,000 according to how AI sees it, right?
it it would have features of a lot of things, because I still recollect like there was one funny project back in Kusat we did. It's like we trained a model with images. Like it was actually my colleague who did that. Images with images of fish as well as bus, and later it was able to generate fishes with the face of buses. So that's tricky. So that's true. It all depends on the data that you provide. So if you're providing a lot of images of fishes and a lot of images of lions, it could even generate an image that has the body of a fish and the face of a lion. So
Mhm.
it's all possible. So it need not be the same, but it could have combinations. So combinations, I say it's going to be millions of combinations. So maybe uh, each and every feature could be different. So eye is a feature, nose is a feature. So it's not a combination of data that's available.
And also like how well it is defined as separated data. So if the person who is giving it combines a bus and a fish, the AI doesn't understand the difference. So it thinks like these are the same object that needs to be created. So it creates an object that's a mix.
True, true. So that's what I told. It's always garbage in, garbage out. So there's a pre-processing stage where if the pre-processed data that we give into the model is not good enough, the model is gonna go weird and make biases. So that's why I told like the how important is the quality of data for all these models. So that's why OpenAI or any big companies, they're all running after a huge amount of data sources. So they
Hmm.
start with small amount of data, and once they figure out the model is good enough, they provide a lot of data so that it can understand the patterns.
Okay. According to you, what are some most exciting advancements in generative AI in the recent days?
So, in Gen AI, the most important one would be AI agents, because agents, it's like a replica of a personality or any task solving uh, material or human being. We could provide a task and the agent would be able to solve it or find a solution. Like, example, one of the agent could be I could provide 10 or 15 blocks to the agent, and I could ask the agent to write a new one from that. Or I could have a voice-based agent to do the booking, which could be alternative to customer service. So AI
Hmm.
agent is the advancement of this year or this scenario, because it's rapidly developing. Maybe tomorrow or
Hmm.
next week something new might come in. But AI agents is something that is so good. It could generate human-like text or images. It could generate human-like customer
Knowledge.
services, customer feedback. That's the generation's effect of this current era.
So, how I hear what you're saying is more of like, so you can create an agent, or that's what we call, and they are going to have a personality like a customer agent, customer service agent, and you have trained it with all the kind of similar information on, for example, all the calls that has been done from this call center for like say 5 years, and it kind of automatically know how to behave like a human and solve the exact problems that happened before. So then the AI is specialized in a one single task,
Mhm.
and they do it as close as a human being, or even better.
Uh, True. That is true. So the way that I see is, the most costliest thing that we cannot define a cost for is human creativity and human mind, because uh, if a human mind is free, it gives space for development. What the AI agents pitch in is like, for every customer service, it's gonna be something of a usual question, like, how do I look into my billing? How do I look into or get paid on this day? Or what is a transaction I do on so and so day? It's something like an information retrieval, which
Mm.
we don't need a human being in the loop.
Mm.
So anything that is repetitive, I would suggest AI agents are the best. But maybe we could focus the human interactions much more for maybe for a higher task or something that is much more complicated.
Mm.
So anything basic information retrieval, it is going to be AI agents. But anything that is task specific or something that is complicated, like, maybe a person wanna talk about a specialized specific scenario of a customer, maybe then a human could intervene. So it's like
And
AI agent for the repetitive task, and humans for the creative and much more
complicated.
complicated task. Yeah.
Yeah, and how I see in a funny way is that in the future, AI is going to push everyone to kind of go towards creative problem solving. It won't let anyone hide behind repetitive tasks, because those repetitive tasks doesn't exist anymore. Like driving, or creating content, which is very similar, or for example, like call centers. Those things are going to be like solved by these technologies, and everyone would be asked to like go find a niche where you can creatively solve something, not repeat the same kind of task every single day.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. I mean, it is actually. I mean, if you keep about the media that put forth all the sort of like fear about AI, it could actually lead into creative mindset. Because if I have an agent that could write my thought process into code, like, I for my research, I know this is a procedure that need to be followed and that need to be put into code. If an AI agent could do that, that's that's so good, because I could focus on the research part and the AI would do the coding part.
Exactly.
So yeah, but keeping aside the media, because a lot of media is spreading the fear of AI, but I don't think it's like next 400 years we need to fear AI, because it's human generated anyways.
Uh, and what are the biggest challenges currently faced by AI research? Is it data? Is it technology set? What would you say is like a few big ones?
So the few big ones would be one is the computational power to train these models are quite high. So maybe only the big players or the multinational companies can bring forth a revolutionary change in these scenarios. The other one is the quality of the data, because a lot of data that is available is in uh, probably in English. So if you look into the generative AI development back in India regarding specific
Mm.
native language, it is very few or very hand like just a handful of them, because the amount of data that we have for the native languages is quite low. So there is a fear of missing out for the native languages. But uh, there are a lot of startups back in India that's focusing on this particular scenario.
Mm.
The other thing is domain specific, because as AI gets revolutionized, we need a lot of domain specific people who know about the domain as well as AI, because AI cannot substitute a doctor, but a doctor who knows about AI could make revolutionary changes in the field of medicine. It's
Mm.
like just like anyone who knows about reading and writing, there should be a basic threshold of AI literacy that need to be there in the society so that it could bring a lot of changes. So
Mm.
literacy rate of AI is something that's again a roadblocker. And whereas there are other concerns, ethical concerns also, like how to regulate or how to make a lot of things ethical.
Mm.
That is also kind of a pain point for generative AI, because even governments need to have maybe a minister of AI, just like Saudi Arabia has. Could bring in a lot of change. If I
Yeah, I think.
to summarize, it would be data, AI literacy, and then it would be regulations and guidelines.
Yeah, and I would say like a few things since you explained it in this way. I was recently reading about Microsoft funding a company that is building nuclear fusion reactors. And that's because they kind of understand one of the primary bottleneck for all this is going to be computation and energy generally. So they would like to create clean energy using nuclear fusion, which would be used to run supercomputers that kind of does all the processing and kind of power up the AI. So that would also be like a big upcoming trend, how to create more clean energy to make sure AI is sustainable and it can be like on a very broader scale. And very good point with native language, which I had never thought about, because I can see, for example, someone who is in YouTube, the amount of content that is in English is much more than, for example, Malayalam, which is like a very native, very like a very specific language back in India. So all the history, all the data, all the knowledge that was in that kind of niche language, if AI gets extremely big, would be not used, and it would be outdated, and people won't even remember it in a few years. So that's a unique challenge that comes out as AI develops. Like, who gets the golden piece of AI? What culture? What political frame? What countries would get like a golden ticket to AI, and how it's propagated around the world? What impact do you think AI will have on jobs and industries in the next decade?
So that's a tricky question if you ask me, because it would revolutionize a lot of domains like content creation or maybe customer service.
Hmm.
Uh, but it would lead to a lot of new job openings, because just like there are platforms like Landflow by DataStax, because it is an open source product, it helps us to create no code based Gen AI tools. So in my way, it could lead to a shift in how the job domain is. It's like AI literate society should be generated so that people could align their jobs more for AI or data related jobs. But it's kind of a pivoting. I
Hmm.
would say in content creation, a lot of repetitive jobs would be lost, but a lot of jobs would be added also.
Yeah.
So in sum total, it's gonna be a paradigm shift
Hmm.
how the jobs are. So it's a big question. So some jobs are going to be lost, but some
Mm.
jobs are going to be created.
Yeah, and my concern is more of like there would be jobs created by AI, but since most people do repetitive jobs in the world, because the system is built in that way, you need to do repetitive jobs because they create a structure you need to follow, so it's very predictable. There would be more people losing jobs than new jobs created. So that's at least a concern. It might not play out the same way into the future. And another point is that there would be a lot of generative content, similar kind of pictures, audio, video, those kind of things, which is going to be flooding into the market. And there would be demand for people who generate unique content. Um,
That is true. That is true. I agree on that fact. But the fact is like how we learn things is like as a human mind, we also learn patterns, right? So if you mention like a lot of creative repetitive jobs are gonna be lost, the repetitive jobs could be generated in a similar manner also. Like AI needs prompt, which is actually
yeah.
repetitive job. So
Mhm.
maybe a lot of prompt engineers. So anyone who was a creative or a technical writer could be a prompt engineer now.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Mhm.
it, if you check the tally points, maybe no one need to fear for the next 50 years because computers came in and the adoption of computers is still ongoing. I mean,
Mm,
digitization and digitalization is not yet complete. So
mm,
I don't see how the tally is gonna go wrong because there is always going to be a tally of jobs lost and jobs gained because it takes a lot number of years to get AI adopted into society. So by the time AI gets adopted, people would be literate about AI. So it's a process. So
mm.
maybe in the starting there might be a bit of shift in the job domain, but I don't think that would lead to a lot of job loss because I mean, as a researcher, I don't see anytime soon how this is gonna create a lot of job loss. I mean, it could create a shift, but maybe
Not like fundamental, like mass extinction of all jobs.
yeah.
Um, but it could also go to a place where we start solving bigger problems. So, like back in time, the kind of things we produced had a level that we used to keep. But after computers kind of came out, internet kind of become like everywhere. The kind of problems we started solving also kind of broadened. We went deep into medicine, into like DNA computing, or solving really big problems. That would happen, I would say. Once this kind of normalizes, there would still be jobs, but people would be working on very harder, on like a deeper problems with the help of AI.
I could give you a simple example actually. So before computers, there were typewriters, and typewriters had the QWERTY type pad, like the
Mm,
keypads. So it is a general understanding that QWERTY is not the best type pad or the keypads for computers. But QWERTY is still there inside the Mac that I use because it's kind of a transition. People who used
mm,
to typewriters were much more comfortable with the QWERTY, and genetically we are also comfortable with the QWERTY type pad. So
mm.
it's kind of like even though new products came in, it had something that similar features with the old products also. Since there are typewriters with QWERTY, now
Mm,
we have keyboards with QWERTY. But that doesn't mean that QWERTY is not the best keyboard ever. So
mm,
even
mm,
in the domain of product management, people tend to pivot, not to create a complete change, but to bring in a change that is that could be aligned with the society also.
mm, 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 mm.
So DAW keyboard, or there are a lot of new keyboard that is so much popular, but the number of users
But
of
since
those
people
keyboards
are
are very
used
less.
to the new.
In the product management, when they create a product, they don't actually create something new. They try to keep it aligned to the user so that the adoption is quite high.
Mm,
It won't be as painful for the old users also. So in the same way, if there's an AI, if I'm an AI product manager, I would
mm,
keep something of the traditional works so that the transition from non-AI to AI would be fruitful.
mm. Yeah, maybe a typical example would be like ChatGPT. You can see like it is a chat, and people like talk to it and it kind of answers. It could have been a whole different kind of product. But since everyone is used to chat, um, OpenAI was like, maybe this is the right way to go, and introduced AI and large language models. So it makes complete sense because then the people using it would be much more than a whole new tech coming out. So next question is like, how do you address ethical concerns with generative AI, such as like bias or misinformation?
As long as technology grows and it is open to everyone and it could be known to everyone, it's the ethical concerns could be handled much easier. Like if whatever we build or any software that we build is open source or it's available in the market for people to test it, then we could regulate ethical concerns just like how blockchain does it because it's going to be a peer-to-peer system. So one would be the effective way would be to have governance, AI governance in place in all the institutions and all the tasks that we do. The other one would be to promote open source community and open source product so that it would help a peer-based engagement in the products that we develop. So how I could suggest that in the domain of research, if you publish an article, it's a peer review that's more important, right? In the
Hmm.
same way, anything gets published or anything that's going to be released, there's going to be a peer review or some sort of a system that could regulate uh, the system. And maybe the companies could have a uh, common consensus in such a way that the data that they train on would be less biased because all the companies want to have a pure data, but it's quite impossible. But if there is a good data that could be trained on, maybe the bias could be reduced. But and in terms of ethical concerns, it's always going to be open source community and peer to peer effort.
Yeah, and maybe like to create a product without any bias is almost impossible. For example, like if you go to legal system in US, you can see like there is a lot of cases with like Black Americans compared to white Americans or any other race. So when if you train an agent on law and if you train it based on the historic data from the different cases, it's only natural for the agent to be a bit biased because times shifted, but the data stays kind of biased from past. And it would be even hard to pick data and say that this is not biased because it has to do a lot with cultural frame as well. So I would say like very hard problem to solve again, depending on how deep the researchers look at. But completely removing bias would be very hard. Also with misinformation, I feel like the faster the regulation kicks in, the better, because it would be a lot of misinformation happening with like auditory, visual media. So the next thing I wanted to ask you is that how do you see the competition for AI dominance between countries like US and China? I see like these are the two top candidates for research and also like execution of technologies. And AI is like their primary view, primary like priority right now. So how do you think that is going to play out?
So, I mean, if it was like maybe 10 or 50 years ago, I would tell like just two major players. But in my opinion, there's a lot of influence of the developing countries because developing countries are having a lot of research going on, which could
Mm.
lead to a lot of groundbreaking things. So maybe US, China, or any other players would have an AI arms race, but
Yeah.
I would say it's not governmental agencies actually. It's more aligned towards the private firms more or less. Now the AI research or most of the things that we have right now in public. So I would say it's not much of an AI race because most of the things are being promoted through open source. So as long as things are in open source, there is not going to be a race because everyone could use it. Like any
Yeah.
companies or industries could use it. So unlike the fear of like an arms race that's there in like a couple of maybe a decade ago, air race is going to be much more a flat rate because a lot of new countries like France or like European countries or Asian countries all are into the game. So it's hardly a fact that it's a common growth and it's not going to be kind of a someone who dominates because there is not going to be a dominancy level in this because as long as someone dominates there would be a system that could outperform them. It's like
Mhm.
okay, I mean, there could be a lot of computation, but there is how the research is going on. Computation may not be a trouble long, I mean, ahead, because a lot of new systems that could optimize the current computation and outperform the largest supercomputers also. So I would say it would be an issue because it all depends on the community that would develop. And from my perspective, a lot of people suggest or focus on open source products. Like if you look into Meta, whatever they do, most of the things are open source.
Yeah.
It's like anyone could look into their products and see they could use it. Unlike OpenAI, the model is like closed source. So it's still skeptical. So I won't tell there would be an AI race, but definitely in the AI race, the developing countries are gonna pivot a lot how things are done. Because even if uh, AI is generated by top countries, the application really lies in the developing countries. So
Uh-huh.
if I'm a product owner, I would literally develop a product for India because the quantity of users is quite high.
Yeah.
It's all skeptical. I mean, they cannot basically have an AI race just for a country per se.
Yeah, the reason why I formulated it in that way, because China and US is the biggest GDPs, biggest like economies in the world, and AI research requires a lot of funding. We can see like when OpenAI was most of its shares was bought by Microsoft, they were giving like such a huge amount to buy it. And I remember like Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, talking like there is this much amount required for it to be tested and developed. For example, like we might get ChatGPT as a chat, but the actual expense to manage it is much more. And when it comes to like developing countries, it's very hard because, for example, their political systems might be not on place, or economy is going through certain other problems, so they don't get to prioritize this as like the next big thing, whereas China and US might. So, but I also understand like this might be a technology that is very open source. So, end of the day, technology would be in everyone's hand, so they could like train it however they want and also have a good start.
That's true. But so the key thing that there is something else that caught my attention. There is a startup. I think Ola itself, Ola back in India, is
Hmm.
trying to have their own GPU cluster so that anyone in India could develop their own AI tools or things. So I wouldn't say it would be difficult because if you look back in India, say maybe if it's a private companies, Reliance Group, the Geo
Hmm.
Group, they tend to have a good AI team in place. Because I had been into one of the interviews earlier in one of the companies. It tend to be related to Geo, but so how I see is like there are a lot of private companies in every nation that could do this. So it's a good discussion because private and public partnership could lead to a lot of good things in a lot of the
Exactly. Yeah.
but that's true. I mean, the US and China, it could be a key point of discussions, but um, it's still skeptical because the talent pool will be coming from a lot of developing countries, and the
Yes.
investments maybe even if the company is US, the investments could be from Saudi or investments could be from Japan or
Mhm.
any of those places because it does not matter where the investments come from. So uh,
Wow.
it's going to be more or less a flat rate eventually because in many decades ago the information was not streamlined, but right now everyone has like access to a lot of informations. So
Hmm.
even if
But still, I would say the top 10 companies are from US and China. Like, it is true that internet is everywhere, but still, like, the top 10 is still coming from two
uh,
countries.
that would be there, but I mean it's true the top, but maybe the top 10 companies are from China or US. I think it's gonna be US mostly, but the top 10 employees or the top 10
Yes.
managers or CEOs are gonna be from Asian countries.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They would definitely like be supportive. I feel like the talent pool definitely comes from abroad, but since the government is like positioned in a way to really like focus and put the resources into technologies, the country would benefit more. But since people are talented all over the world. They would migrate and go there to make use of their talent. But I have one of the last questions to you. So you can see like a lot of corporations. If you look at like OpenAI or Microsoft or Google, uh, they are kind of owning this AI. Facebook definitely have an open source Llama like technologies out there, but you can also see like Google, Microsoft, OpenAI doesn't really share what is the underlying technology and data. How would you say corporations would play a role in AI, and how would it affect the global economy, according to you?
Corporates would play a significant role in the current scenario, but in the global economy per se, it may not be much affected because every corporation is dependent on the markets worldwide. Like even if you look into Amazon, Amazon has a US market, Amazon has an Asian market, or across the world. So they would do what's best for their customers actually, but
Mm.
it would not harm or anything that could harm the customers. So I would say for the time being, let's be in the path of AI and enjoy its products, and let's not think much about the economic side because I don't think it's gonna affect a lot of the customers because for the customers, what's the best? That's what the companies adopts. Regarding the data source, yes, but most of the things are gonna be under regulations because if you want to use an AI model in a company, there are regulations that need to be set because I understand if you want to use an AI model in UK government based agencies, they're gonna bring in their own regulations. We cannot probably use any models that's closed source or something like that. It's all gonna be government regulations that's gonna govern all those things in the future because maybe at one day all the governments are taking on decisions like you cannot use a model XYZ in any of the agencies. That's it. How
Mm.
corporate you are, you could not just use that. It would be a shelf product. So
Mhm.
mostly the corporate would take a decision that would align with the customers as well as the goodwill of the citizens in case because only then they have revenue.
Market.
Yeah, market value.
Yeah, and also like just to add on to that, I feel like the reason why that question was asked was mostly that, um, for example, imagine nuclear power, right? And back in time, if it was privatized, if it was like given to all the corporation to develop, it would have developed in a very different way. The kind of system of governance would have changed quite drastically because if you look at like right now a war between Ukraine or Russia, you can see like the reason why countries doesn't attack Russia is because of nuclear power. But if it was privatized, if it was corporations having this, they have the same kind of power as well, that they get immunity from rest of the world. They wouldn't have to answer anyone. They could do whatever they want. So I feel like AI is very similar kind of technology, which has the power to change the world and could be destructive if done in in a certain way. So when you look at like corporations developing it into such an advanced technology, there is a chance in time those small group of companies would kind of create immunity, and other countries governance cannot really get involved unless they regulate it very before, like right now. And if it's like 10 years into the future, it would be very hard because they will have such amount of technology to change the governments itself.
That's true, but I guess in one way or the other, most of the governments have such a regulation in place. Like if you think about, I'm not so sure about. I just read in a book, a monopoly is not allowed in any of the countries. Like Google cannot be a monopoly in a particular domain because if
Yeah,
that's the case, they would get
break it.
yeah, from the government.
uh,
In the same way, AI is another technology. So most of the basic technology regulations would prevent that from happening because
uh,
that's already in place. But in the current scenario, uh, all those things are being funded by research actually. Without research,
mm,
none of the companies could do because universities still stand a backbone for all the companies. Whether you take Nvidia, whether you take Google, anything that happens to be a part of the research, right?
mm,
So I believe the current society and the current graduates are good enough to know how research is important and how this could be aligned. Think if all the universities take a decision and tell that, okay, we want to make all the research as open source. There's nothing the companies could do. So
Mm.
it all depends on how the universities also pivot. So that I don't think that that's going to be a current issue in the current scenario, because then the information was not accessible, but now, as I said, information is quite accessible in a faster way. So to have an fear of missing out, it's quite less compared to old days.
Mm.
So in the same way, having the such fears also need to be less, because uh, industries just play pivoting role, but universities and the researching area play a much larger role also, because OpenAI could not exist without the research of the past 60 years that the researchers have been done, right? So
Yeah.
that's a question for discussion, but I would say researchers won't allow for a closed source every time, because that's how the mindset of a researcher is.
And okay, now is the final question. So envision like a future, say 20 years from now. How would you think that looks like with AI from the frame of AI?
I would say in the frame of AI, I look into it. I mean, if I look into myself after 20 years, I could see myself sleeping peacefully, believing that AI could do a lot of my repetitive tasks, and spending a lot of time with my family and teaching future the kids or my students regarding how to use AI more ethically, and having a common consensus that AI would be like a co-pilot or a co-worker that could aid all my efforts in creating a better humanity, and making my time to develop human nature of human culture per se.
Yeah, like more of like you'll get more of your time back to things you really care about.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
way I look into, because there is an interview between one of the famous channels as well as the founder of Linux, Linus. So he was like, "Will AI take over the
Mm.
world?" And he was like, "Okay, then I could just go and peacefully sleep, because I trust it's not going to be end, because it could give me a lot of time to rest and use my time for creativity." So that's what I believe, because AI would give me a lot of time back to focus on the creative side.
Okay, think this is the end of the interview. Thanks a lot, Edwin, for spending the time to give us a good idea about generative AI. And I wish you the best for the things that's coming on your way.
Thank you.
We'll talk 5 minutes after the interview as well.
Sure. Thank you.